Have a good day. We're on DAF Zayin Amid Aleph at the Mishnah.
You want a coffee? Oh, yeah.
I got one. Thank you so much. Okay, let's get going. Misha nigmar dino ubarach ubalifnei oso beit-din ein sosrin es dino. If a person was convicted in beit-din ploni, and then he runs away before they can mete out the punishment, if they get him back, they don't have to retry his case. He's already been convicted. You could argue, well, I got new evidence and I came and I went and all these things happened. No. You've already been convicted. We don't start all over again. But then the Mishnah says, Kol makom sheyamdu shnayim v'yomru me'idim anu b'ish ploni shnigmar dino b'veistin shel ploni uploni edav harei ze yehareg. Mishnah goes even further and it says that if witnesses come to beit-din beis and they say, we hereby testify that in beit-din aleph, Ploni was already convicted of a capital offense, and we can identify who his witnesses were that contributed to his conviction, then beit-din beis can accept that testimony and on that basis put the accused to death based on that. They don't have to retry the case. Okay. Sanhedrin noheges ba'aretz v'chutz la'aretz. Next halacha. The laws of a Sanhedrin, including a capital Sanhedrin, apply both in Eretz Yisrael and outside of Eretz Yisrael. Sanhedrin hahareges echad b'shavua nikreis chovlanis. If a Sanhedrin puts someone to death once every 7 years, if it executes a criminal once every 7 years, it's called a chovlanis Sanhedrin, an injurious Sanhedrin. In other words, excessive, yeah? But Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah Omer, Echad l'shivim shana, he says once every 70 years. Rabbi Tarfon v'Rabbi Akiva Omrim, Ilu hayinu b'Sanhedrin lo neher agada me'olam. They say, these two Tanoim, that if we were alive at the times when the Sanhedrin was committing capital punishment, no one would have ever died. And why is that? We would have found some way to exonerate him. Well, the Gemara will explain. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer Afein Mar bin Shovchei Damim b'Yisrael. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, remember, he is the descendant of the Nesiim that were alive in the times of capital punishment. The elder Rabbi Gamliel, Hillel, etc. These people were the heads of the Sanhedrin, and they put people to death. So his point is that to defend the honor of his family is that if you would have been alive and would have exonerated all these criminals, you would have created a proliferation of murderers within the Klal Yisrael, within the Jewish community. So that's not a good thing. It's almost like the current debate of capital punishment versus no capital. Does Canada have capital punishment? No. Too bad.
Yeah,
okay.
Texas is going to have marijuana. California has? No.
I don't remember any.
Probably not. They're the most liberal state anyway.
So we'll have marijuana so that if there's murderers, we won't care, right? That's okay. So the Gemara now says, "Lifnei oso beit-din hu de'ein sosrin, halifnei beit-din acher sosrin." But hatani seifa kol makom she'amdu shnayim v'yomer me'idan anu azish ploni shenigmar dino beit-din ploni uploni edav harei ze nehera. The Gemara points out that there's a shtickle stira in the Mishnah. The first line of the Mishnah says that the only time that a person does not have to be retried is if he's returned back to the same beit-din where he was convicted. But the second line in the Mishnah says that even if he's brought to a second beit-din, as long as you have witnesses that testify that he was convicted in the first beit-din, he doesn't have to be retried. He can be put to death summarily. So how do you reconcile it? So the Gemara answers, Amar Abaya lo kasha, kan be'eretz Yisrael, kan bechutz la'aretz. Abaya says it's not a contradiction. There's a difference between the courts in Eretz Yisrael and the courts in chutz la'aretz. The Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda ben Dustoi Omer, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach, Borach me'aretz l'chutz la'aretz, ein sosrin es dino. But mechutz la'aretz la'aretz, sosrin es dino, v'pnei zechusa shel Eretz Yisrael. And the explanation is as follows. If a person flees from Eretz Yisrael and goes to Chutz La'aretz and he's brought to a beit-din in Chutz La'aretz, and they hear from the witnesses that he was already convicted in Eretz Yisrael, then we don't have to retry his case. But if a person fled from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, even if witnesses say that he was already convicted in Chutz La'aretz, we do retry his case. And that's what the first line of the Mishnah was referring to. And why is that? Because of the Zuchuyos of Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael has special spiritual quality such that maybe the Dayanim in Eretz Yisrael will be able to find some saving grace for this fellow that the beit-din in Chutz La'aretz was unable to find. Right? You know, you look at what's going on in the beit-din in Eretz Yisrael today and you say, hey, how come you're not trying to find zuchus for all these people that are so, they're having such problems? So it's probably just a temporary phase. Eventually the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael will prevail. Let's go weiter. Sanhedrin noheges v'chulei. The laws of Sanhedrin are extant both in Eretz Yisrael and in Chutz La'aretz. Minahani mili. So where do we know this from? The Tanu Rabbanan, v'hayu eila lachem lechukas mishpat ledorosechem b'chol moshvosechem. That's the girsa that you have to add into the Gemara. That these shall be for you as an eternal statute in all of your dwelling places. All of your dwelling places implies even in Chutz La'aretz. L'man l'sanhedrin sheneges ba'aretz uve Chutz La'aretz. So imkein ma talmud loimar. So then why does the Torah in Parsha Shoftim say that you shall set up judges in b'chol she'arecha asher Hashem Elokecha nosein lecha lishvatecha, that only in those gates which God divides among your tribes, which implies only in Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara answers, Bisharecha tamoshe beit-din b'chol plach uplach b'chol ir va'ir, uv'chutz la'aretz tamoshe b'chol plach uplach v'yatamoshe b'chol ir va'ir. So the Gemara answers, it's a question of density of beit-din. In Eretz Yisrael there has to be a higher density, such that in every major city there has to be a beit-din. But in Chutz La'aretz, we don't have such a requirement. In every region, to have a beit-din is sufficient. So that's how you reconcile it. Next, Sanhedrin ha'hareges v'chulei. A Sanhedrin that kills once every 7 years is an injurious Sanhedrin. They're overdoing it. But then Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says once every 70 years. So iboyelahu echas l'shivim shana nikres chavlanis odil ma'ur cha'arahu he teku. So the Gemara says we're not sure what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was meant when he said once every 70 years. Was he saying once every 70 years is excessive, like the previous Tana, or was he saying that once every 70 years is acceptable, but anything more than once every 70 years is excessive? The Gemara says we're not sure. We'll let that sit. Rabbi Tarfon v'Rabbi Akiva omrim ilu hayinu v'chulei. So if we were alive during those days when they were meting out capital punishment, no one would have ever been executed. So heichi havu avdi. What could they have argued? So Rabbi Yochanan v'Rabbi Elazar damri teravayu reisam treifa harag shalem harag. So the first thing they would try to verify is they would cross-examine the witnesses and say, how can you verify that the guy was not already having a mortal injury when he was murdered? Okay, you say that the guy murdered Ploni. Reuven killed Shimon. But how do you know that Shimon was in perfectly good health? Maybe he had tuberculosis. Maybe he had cancer. How do you know? And in which case, if he was a treifa, they can't be put to death. So Amar Ravashi, imtim salomar shalim hava, dilma b'makom sayif nakav. Makom sayif nekev hava. And Ravashi will take it even further. If the witnesses say, yes, we examined his body post-mortem, we did an autopsy, whatever, and whatever kind of autopsy would be halachically permitted, and we were able to verify that he was perfectly healthy. But still, you could argue, how do you know? Maybe he had a pierced lung, and in the exact place that the sword penetrated was where the injury already, the mortal injury already was. So how do you know that the place where he was stabbed was not already the place where there was a mortal wound? Okay, so that helps us defend the murderer. How do you defend someone from sexual crime? What would they argue? So they would say, how do you know that they were having an affair? I mean, did you actually see the applicator go in the bottle? Which is a euphemism for you know what it is, right? In other words, you didn't see the actual act. You just saw them go into a bedroom together under the covers. How do you know what happened? But v'Rabbanan hechi daini. So the Rabbanan who argue with Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon and say that that's enough to convict a criminal, How do they do that? So they go like Kishmuel, Damar Shmuel, b'menoafim mishayiro kimenoafim. That when it comes to sexual crimes, once two people get under the covers in a hotel room, or that's enough evidence to be able to convict them. Right? That's enough. Okay, Hadron Allah Ketzad Ha'idim.
So if someone kills someone who has a terminal whatever, he's still murder.
No, if you kill a treifa, you don't get put to death.
We're talking about the chicken. We're talking about a human, no?
Yeah, if you kill a treifa, if you kill a human being who's a treifa, you don't get put to death.
And if there's a hole in the lung or something, also the same thing?
It has to be, the definition of a treif is someone who will die within 12 months from his current injuries. And if yes, so then what he's done is terrible. Chaye sha'a is tantamount to ritzicha. It's just not ritzicha for which you get the death penalty, right? Okay, let us go weiter. Eluhein hagolan. So we're switching gears entirely in the next parak. The next parak deals with the laws of who goes to an ir miklat. It's anyone who kills b'shogeg. Now, that has to be fine-tuned very significantly, because what is the definition of shogeg for which you go to an ir miklat? So the Mishnah is going to define it. Hahoreg nefesh bishgaga. So that's the first definition. You kill someone unintentionally. But now let's explain it. Haya ma'agel b'ma'agela v'nafla v'hargaso. The first case is, and Rashi tells us the background. When people in those days had flat rooftops, but when they would apply the plaster to waterproof their rooftops, they would apply the plaster such that it sloped slightly upwards, going up to the center of the roof. I mean, otherwise your roof would flood and the roof would leak or cave in. So they knew what they were doing, right? So you would typically, a person who's plastering his rooftop would typically stand at the edge of the rooftop, take a planing instrument, like a handle attached to a piece of smooth wood, and like a roller or maybe just a flat piece of wood, and would smear going upwards and going downwards, upwards and downwards, smearing the plaster. Okay? So the Mishnah says the only time you go to an ir miklat is if you're rolling it towards you, going in a downward motion, and it slips out of your hands and falls down off the side of the building and hits someone and kills them. But if you're going upwards, as we'll see, you're not going to go to an ir miklat. The general rule is that in order to go into galus, you have to be in the same direction as gravity. That's the way I'm understanding it. Why? Because if you're going against gravity and the mishap occurs, it's closer to being an oines, and therefore you would not go to an ir miklat. So let's see. So that's the first case. So second case is if you are lowering a bucket, let's say filled with water, you're lowering it downwards, let's say from the rooftop down to the ground floor, and it falls, it either slips out of your hands and it falls, or maybe the rope loosens or whatever happens or breaks, and it hits someone on the head and kills them. That's the third case. Second case. Third case is hayored besulam v'naflu lava hargaso. Is a guy, if you're descending a ladder and you slip and fall and you kill someone by falling on top of them. So in those three cases, the first two cases is where an object hits the victim and kills them, the planing instrument or the bucket. Third case is where the person himself falls on top of a person and kills him. So in all those cases, harei ze goyla. You would go to an ir miklat. Avolim haya moshech b'ma'agela v'nafla v'hargaso. Haya dola b'chaves v'nisak achevel v'nafla lava hargaso. Haya ola b'sula v'nafla lava hargo. Harei ze eino gola. But if we take those three cases and change the scenario slightly, so that you're moving upwards with the planing instrument away from you, and it slips and falls and hits someone, or if you're pulling up with the string on the bucket and the rope breaks, or if you're ascending the ladder and you fall, you slip and fall on someone, in all those three cases, you would not go to an ir miklat. The general rule is if you're going in the same direction as gravity, and a mishap occurs and you kill someone, you go to an miklat. If you're going against gravity and a mishap occurs and you kill someone, you do not go to an miklat.
So what happens with him in that case?
Nothing. He doesn't get...
He still killed the guy.
Yes, he'll have to live with it for the rest of his life. We're dealing with a moral society, Harold. In a moral society, the greatest punishment for a person who commits murder is that he's got to live with it. It clearly was an accident. So what are you going to do? There are a lot of guy hits a pedestrian and kills them. It happens, unfortunately, quite often. Guy's got to live with it. We're not going to put him in jail if it was a complete accident.
I'm missing something though. Rabbi made a chiluk between ones and shogeg.
Yes. This is karov la'ones. This is there may have been some level of negligence,
Going against gravity.
Going against gravity,
Is
right?
it ones?
It's closer to onus. Karov la'ones. It's not a complete onus, but it's
Shogeg means.
Shogeg means it was unintentional, but you could have been more careful. It's not.
And that's not ones.
No, that's shogeg. There's a difference.
It happened.
There's a difference between shogeg and onus and halacha. Shogeg is, it could have been anticipated. You could have protected the situation a little bit better. Could have been more careful. And onus is there was less room for you to anticipate this accident was going to happen.
Relatives aren't going to run after the guy even if it wasn't honest.
That's a separate issue. We haven't looked at the halachas of relatives yet. Okay, take a look at the Gemara. Minahani mili. So the question now is, from where do we know this whole idea of you have to be in a downward motion in order to go into Gullus? The word going into Gullus means go to an miklat. So Amar Shmuel da Amar Kra vayapel alav vayamos. In one of the psukim describing an miklat, it says he shall fall upon him and he dies. Ad sheyipol derech nefila, or he causes something to fall upon him. So it has the verb vayapel implies something is going downwards. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan, Bishgaga prat lemezid, Bivlidas prat lemiskaving. Brisa says something a little cryptic. It says the word bishgaga is used in the pasuk, so that excludes if it's intentional. And it also says bivlidas, unknowingly you kill him, which means that it has to be to the exclusion of where you intended to kill him. Now, let's analyze this brisa. Mezid pshita bar ketolo. Why does the Torah have to tell me that I killed him b'shogeg? That should be obvious that it's excluding a mezid, because the Torah already prescribes the death penalty for someone who murders b'mezid. So Amar Rava ema prat la'omer mutter. So Rava says we're excluding a certain kind of shogeg, which is close to being a mezid. What is that case? Where a person thinks it's permitted to murder. When a person thinks it's permitted to murder, he is... on the one hand, he knows exactly what he's doing, he's murdering, but on the other hand, he doesn't realize that there's a death penalty associated with it. So in that situation, we would not give a person the death penalty, and we also don't let him go to an miklat, because that's not a real shogeg. Tosfos asks a very simple question. In other halachos, we call that person a real shogeg. Like in Hilchas Shabbos, if a person thinks it's permitted to turn on a light, and so he turns on the light, he has to bring a korban chatas. He's a real shogeg. Why over here is he not a real shogeg? So Tosfos says that the requirements of shogeg are greater here by an miklat than they are by other halachos because of the added word bishgaga in the pasuk. So therefore, anyone who doesn't conform to not realizing what he's doing is not called shogeg vis-a-vis miklat. Amar le Abaya, I omer mutter anusu. So Abaya says that according to you, the language of the brisa doesn't make sense. It says that we're excluding a mezid. That's not a mezid. This guy's an anus. If he thinks it's permitted to kill, then he really shouldn't be called a mezid. So Amar le sha'ani omer ha'omer mutter karov lemezid. So Rabbi says, because Rabbi says I hold that someone who thinks that it's permitted to do something that's flagrantly wrong, like murder, is close to being amazing. Because like, what planet are you from? How could you not know that intuitively that it's wrong to murder? So therefore, you're karov lemezid. And that's what the brisa means, that it's prat lemezid. Okay. Bivli da'as prat lemiskaving. So the second part of the brisa seemed also to be quite obvious. it has to be without knowledge. So that means, says the Bryce, so that if you premeditate it, then you don't go to an ir miklat. So the Gemara asks, Miskavim Pshita Bar Kitolu. That's no different from a mazid. You're going to be put to death for that. So why do you need the Bryce to tell you? What does the pasuk have to tell you that? So Amar Rabba Prat lo Miskavim Largas Abehema V'Hargas Adam Lekusi V'Hargas Yisrael Lenefil V'Harg Ben Kayam. So Rabba says simply, we're talking about a person who intends to kill, but he thinks that he's killing an entity that does not deserve, that for that person's death, that object's death does not deserve the death penalty. He thinks he's killing an animal, and instead he's killing a human being. Let's say for the example of Lemech, in the Torah, where he thought he was killing an animal when he really killed Cain. Or he thinks he's killing a heathen where it's murder, but you don't get the death penalty for it. Or he thinks he's killing a non-viable infant that is mortally wounded, when in reality he's killing a perfectly viable infant. So in all of those cases, he knew what he was doing, but he thought that there's no death penalty for it. So that's what a prat lo miskavin is. In other words, he will not go to an ir miklat for these things.
It's not talking about a case where there's like two people going, like it says, Adam and a behemoth going right close to by, and he's trying to kill the behemoth.
Well, it could be that case, that very case where he thinks he's killing the behemoth, but he instead shoots the Adam instead. Tanu Rabbanan im befesa prat lekeren zavis. So let's pick apart this brisa. The brisa says the brisa is using the wording of the pasuk. It says v'im befesa below eva hadafo, that if you push the person bepesa, which is all of a sudden, below eva without malice. So what does the words all of a sudden mean, or immediately? So prat lekeren zavis. This is to exclude a situation where the setup was done long in advance, but just the two people didn't know about it. In other words, Pesa implies that there was an instantaneous act which causes the murder. But if the murder was being set up for several seconds or minutes beforehand, and then the accident happened, the person would not go to an ir miklat. What's a classic example of that? Two guys are walking around the building. They don't see each other because they're going to meet at the corner. One guy's holding a pair of scissors like this, which his mother always told him never to do, but he didn't listen to her. So he's holding a pair of scissors, walking down the street, and all of a sudden, the guy at the corner, he stabs the guy and kills him. So that's not called befesa, because they were walking for several seconds or minutes towards each other in the same direction. They just didn't see each other. So that's not called befesa, so therefore you don't go to an ir miklat. Okay. Now, below eva without malice, prat lesone. That the below eva without malice means that if you accidentally kill someone that you disliked or that you hated, you also will not go to an ir miklat. It could have been a total accident, for which, you do a little victory dance afterwards. But that's the point. The point is because since you didn't like the guy, you don't go to an ir miklat. Now, hadafo, shadachfo begufo, o hishlich alav, lahavi yerida shehitzorech aliyah. Hadafo, you push him, it could either be that you push him with your own body, or you cause something to fall upon him. And what is that extra word coming to teach? That as long as you're going in a downward motion, even if the downward motion was for the sake of going upwards afterwards, that's still called going downwards, and you will go to an ir miklat for that. Now, what do we mean? Let's say, for example, a guy has a big mallet, like he's going to the carnival, or he's a lumberjack. We'll see. Many times you have to lift something up in order to bring it down, or sometimes you have to bring something down in order to lift it up. So let's say you were in the process of bringing something down in order to lift it up with a lot of force. Since you killed him while you were on the way down, even though it was for the object of bringing it up afterwards, you would still go to an ir miklat. It's still called going down. Next, below tzediyah, if it was unpremeditated or there was no stalking involved, that's what the words below tzedia means. Prat l'miskavin letzad zeh v'holcha lo letzad acher. This is to exclude someone who's really closer to an onus in this case. He meant to shoot the arrow in that direction, but he was such a terrible shot that he shot it in a totally different direction and it killed someone. That's karov la'ones. Now, therefore, you don't go to an ir miklat. You only go to an ir miklat if you shot it and it went in the direction you wanted it to go, but you didn't realize that there was someone there that it was going to hit. Va'asher lo tzada, that if you didn't entrap or premeditate, prat l'miskavin l'zorek shtayim l'zorek arba. This is to the exclusion of someone, again, similar situation where he intended to only throw the object 2 amos and it traveled 4 amos, or vice versa. Va'asher yavo es re'ehu bayar, or if he comes upon his friend in the forest. That's an example that the Torah says explicitly about wood cutting. If you happen to come across your friend in the forest, and you're chopping wood, and the axe flies off and hits the guy and kills him, so there too you're going to go to an ir miklat. But what we learn from that pasuk is ma ya'ar rishus l'nizik ulamazik likanes l'sham av kol rishus l'nizik ulamazik likanes l'sham. That it has to be an open domain where both parties belong there. So if it's private property, then the laws of ir miklat do not apply. Ba'amine Rabbi Avohu me Rabbi Yochanan haya'ola besulam v'nishmat hashliva mitachta v'nafla v'harga mahu. So ki hagavna aliyahi o yeridahi. Interesting question. A guy's ascending a ladder, and he steps down in order to go up, and the rung of the ladder breaks. And as a result, he goes down and while stepping on the rung, and then falls and kills the victim. Is that called aliyah, or is that called yerida? Amar lei kavar nagata b'yerida shitzarach aliyah. He says that's a classic case of going down for the sake or for the intent of going up. But since lamaisa, he's going downwards when he breaks the rung, it's called a yerida, and therefore he does go to an ir miklat. So Esvei, let me bring you a challenge to that. The Brisa says, Zeh klal kol sheb derech yerida so gola shelo b'derech yerida so eino gola. That anytime you're going upwards, anytime you're going downwards, you are goyla. If you're going upwards, you're not goyla. So shelo b'derech yerida so lisuya my lav lisuya kai gavna. What does the Brisa mean when it says if it's not going downwards, you're not goyla? Isn't it including this kind of case where you broke the rung while you were going up? So, but no, wait a minute. So, but according to that reasoning, what's the first line of the Brisa coming to include? Maybe it's coming to include when you're going up a ladder and you break the rung. So you can't bring anything from this Brisa, because this Brisa is really addressing the following. It's talking about a butcher holding a butcher cleaver. Detanya. Katzav shahaya mekatzev. So, because we have this brisa, which is very confusing, there are 4 different statements within the brisa that all contradict each other. A guy is hacking away with his butcher cleaver. So, Tana chada lefanav chayev la'acharav pater, v'tanya idach la'acharav chayev lefanav pater, v'tanya idach bein lefanav bein la'acharav chayev, v'tanya idach bein lefanav bein la'acharav pater. So, the first line of the brisa says that if the cleaver is in front of him when it kills, then he goes to galus. If it's behind him, then he doesn't go to galus. The second line says just the opposite. If it's in front of him, he doesn't go, and if it's behind him, he does go. The third line of the Brisa says, regardless of whether it's in front of him or behind him, he goes into galus. And the fourth line says, regardless of whether it's in front of him or behind him, he doesn't go into galus. So, what are you supposed to? How do you make sense of this? V'lo kasha kan b'yerida shelafanav va'alila shelacharav. Kan ba'aliyah shelafanav v'yerida shelacharav. Kan b'yerida shelafanav v'shelacharav. Kan ba'aliyah shelafanav v'shelacharav. So it all depends whether you're in an upward motion or a downward motion. You could be in an upward motion and the cleaver still in front of you because the guy stuck out his big chin while you were lifting up the cleaver and he was standing in front of you, right? So then you kill him going up, so you're putter. Or it could be you're coming down and he stuck out his head and you went down and you whacked him, right? Or you could be going up in an upward motion as you're bringing it up behind you. Because he's like, sticks his head up above your head. He wants to do peekaboo. And while you're lifting up the cleaver, you whack him. Or it could be going in a downward motion because it's really all the way back and it's going downwards at that point. So then you would go to an ear miklat if you killed him that way. Okay, so basically that's how you reconcile it. It all depends on upward or downward. It's not really dependent upon in front or in back, and that's why the Bryce is not contradicting itself. Okay, Lema kitanai. But let's say this whole discussion of Yerida Litzorach Aliyah, if you're in a downward motion, but your objective was to go up with that downward motion, is that called down or not? That could be a machlokes. What does it say in the Brisa? If a guy's on his way, ascending a ladder and the rung slips from underneath him and he falls and kills, so then one Brisa says you go to you're chayiv, and the other one says you're potter. So my lav b'hakam iflagi, the mar sover yeridahi umar sover aliyahi. So the assumption is both Brises are talking about going into an ear miklat. The one that says that you do go to an ear miklat holds that because you're going downwards, even if your intent was to go upwards. And the other Brisa says pater, no, because since your intent was going upwards, your falling downwards doesn't count. Lo, the kulei alma aliyahi, v'lo kasha kan lenizakin kan legolus. So the first answer is no. Maybe I'll tell you that both Brises hold that a Yerida Litzorach Aliyah is really called an Aliyah, not a Yerida. Therefore, you always don't go to an ear miklat. The Brisa that says that your chayv is not talking about an ear miklat, it's talking about damages. If I fall down a ladder and I break someone's arm in the process, then it doesn't make a difference whether it was Aliyah, Yerida, Shogeg, Mezid, you're always chayv for damages. And that's why the Brisa says you're chayv. So that's one explanation. Another answer could be is that both Brises are talking about going to an ear miklat. But the question is, what was the status of the rung? In other words, was the rung wormy, and that's why it slipped out? In which case, the wood was rotted, so that when I stepped on it, there was a depression in the wood, and therefore I was going downwards when I slipped off it and killed the guy, in which case I do go to an ear miklat. The other Brisa that says I don't go to an ear miklat is because the wood was perfectly strong, but it just slipped out, and that's why I fell off and I killed the guy, in which case I was on my way up completely, but I still slipped and fell and I killed the guy. So that's why I don't go to an ear miklat. Another answer, another answer could be as follows, is that both cases the wood is perfectly strong and healthy, but the reason why the Brisa says that I go to an ear miklat even though I'm going upwards is because there was wiggle room in where the rung was connected in the holes of the side of the ladder. Since there was wiggle room in the holes, there was a slight downward motion before I slipped and fell and killed the guy. Whereas the Brisa, and therefore I go to an ear miklat. The Brisa that says that I don't go to an ear miklat is because the rung was tightly embedded within the side of the ladder. I just slipped off of it, and when it got dislodged, and I fell. So that's the reason why I don't go to an ear miklat, because I was constantly in an upward motion when I slipped and I fell. Okay, let's go on to the next Mishnah. Nishmat habarzel mikato v'harag Rabbi Omer eino goyla v'chachamim omer goyla. Min ha'itza mitpakeya Rabbi Omer goyla v'chachamim omer eino goyla. As we'll see, there is a fundamental machlokes between Rabbi and the Chachamim as to how to learn the pshat in the pasuk. The pasuk says that if you come upon your fellow in the forest and you're a woodcutter, and the Torah's language is like this: V'niducha yado v'garzen lichrosa eitz, that your hand slips on the axe when you're cutting the wood, v'nashal habarzel min ha'etz, and the wood, the iron rather, flies off from the wood, umatzas re'ehu vames, and it kills your friend and he dies. That's the grounds to go to an ear miklat. Rebbe understands that when it says that the iron flies off the wood, what it really means is that while you're cutting wood, a wood chip flies off from the tree, hits the guy, and kills him. So the projectile is the wood from the tree that kills the guy. The Chachamim learn that the projectile is the head of the axe that slips off the handle, which is made out of wood, and goes ahead and kills the guy. That's the machlokes. And so, therefore, in the case where the axe flies off the handle, so Rebbe says that's not what the Torah is talking about, so therefore you don't go to an ir miklat. But the Chachamim say, no, that's exactly what the pasuk is talking about, and you go to an ir miklat. You see, according to Rebbe, that's korov la'onis, because that was so unanticipated that the axe would malfunction, right? But in a case where the wood flies off of the tree, that's something that happens all the time when you're a lumberjack, is that you get a lot of flying pieces. Okay, now but if the wood flies off of the tree, the Chachamim hold that that's closer to mezid, and therefore you would not go to an ir miklat. And Rebbe says, no, that's exactly what the Torah is saying, that in that case you do go to an ir miklat. Okay, let's take a look at the Gemara. Tanya, Amar lahem Rebbe lachachamim v'chi nemar v'nashal habarzel me'etzo v'halono nemar ela min ha'etz v'od nemar eitz lamata v'nemar eitz lamala ma eitz ha'omer lamayla min ha'etz ha'mispakeya af eitz ha'omer lamata min ha'etz ha'mispakeya. Rebbe makes two arguments to plead his case as to why he's correct that the Torah is talking about the wood being the projectile, the wood from the tree. Argument number one is that it doesn't say that the iron flies off its wood, it says the iron flies off the wood, implying that it's referring to the wood of the tree, not the wood of the handle. And secondly, the first part of the pasuk said the word ha'etz, and it was clearly there talking about chopping wood. So therefore, when the word ha'etz is used in the second part of the pasuk, it must be also referring to chopping the wood of the tree that ends up killing the person. Those are Rebbe's two arguments. Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi Amar Rav, u'shneiha mikra'echa darshu, v'nashal habarzel min ha'etz. Rebbe Savar yesh eim l'masoris v'nishal ksiv, v'Rabbanan Savar yesh eim l'mikra v'nashal karinan. So both of them look at the word v'nashal in the pasuk and say, how do you understand this pasuk? V'nashal means it flies off. If you read it exactly the way it appears, v'nashal means the iron flies off the wood. So clearly it's the pasuk is implying that the iron is the projectile. But Rebbe holds, yesh aim lamasoris. Look at the way the pasuk is, look at the way the word is written. Nun, shin, lamed. Without any other indication, you would read it not as na shal, because the kamatz is a long vowel. And normally you don't insert a long vowel unless you have a masoret for that, unless you have a tradition for that. Right? The way that we have a masoret to read it a certain way. But Rebbe says, look at the way it's written. If the way it's written doesn't indicate that it should have an elongated vowel, you can read it as with a truncated vowel, like a chirik, v'nishal. Nishal is in the passive, which means it was the axe head that caused the wood, that was responsible for the wood to be the flying projectile. That's the way he reads the pasuk. But the Chachamim say no. If it's read by the Balkriya as v'nashal, then that's the way you're supposed to interpret the pasuk primarily, and therefore it's referring to the iron flying as the projectile, and that's what it means. So, frek the Gemara of a Rebbe yesh eim l'masoros v'yirlei, you mean to tell me that throughout Shas, Rebbe holds you look at the way that it's written and you interpret it based on the way it's written, not the way that it's read. V'ha'amar Rav Yitzchak v'Rebbe Yossi, amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rebbe v'Rebbe Yehuda ben Roetz, u'Bei Shammai v'Reb Shimon v'Rebbe Akiva, kulu svira lehu yesh eim l'mikra. But one second, Rebbe was placed in a group of several Tanoim, all of whom hold that you go according to the way that it's recited by the Balkriya, not the way it's written, just the opposite of what you're suggesting over here. So the Gemara says, you're right, Hainu deka'amar lahu va'od. That's why Rebbe had to bring a second reason. The first reason involved the word v'nashal, and he said you can read it as v'nishal, meaning that the axe causes the wood to fly off. But if you're not happy, because normally, Rebbe, you're being inconsistent because throughout Shas you don't read it as v'nishal, so then I have a second reason. which is that it's based on the fact that the word ha'etz is used in the first part of the pasuk to refer to the tree that's being chopped and not the handle. So therefore the word ha'etz in the second part of the pasuk must be referring to the same thing. Amar of Papa, man deshada pisa ledikla va'asar tamari va'azal tamari v'katul banu lamachlokas the Rabbi v'Rabbanan. If a person throws a clod of earth against a date tree and causes the dates to dislodge and fall and kill someone, that's what we call killer dates. Did you ever go on a killer date? No, that's something else. Anyway, but that's a machlokas between Rabbi and the Chachamim. That's a machlokas Rabbi and the Chachamim, that according to Rabbi, because what are you doing? You are causing a projectile through your inertia, through your throwing of the clod, you're causing the dates to kill. It's the same thing as striking with the axe against the tree, causing the projectile to come from the tree and kill. According to Rabbi, you go into Golus for that, and according to the Chachamim, you don't go into Golus for that, because that was, like we said before, that's more Karov Lemezid, I guess, for the Chachamim. So the Gemara says, Pshita, isn't that obvious? No, it's not obvious, because Mahu Detema Kekoch Kochel Dami Kamash Malan. You might have argued that even according to Rebbe, that you would get off from going to an Ir Miklat because you're not holding on to the clod when it flies off and hits the dates. Like by the axe, you're holding on to the axe and it hits the wood. Maybe that's more direct. But over here, you're throwing a projectile, and the projectile hits the dates and makes the dates into a projectile. So it's more indirect, and therefore you should get off even according to Rebbe. Kamash Malan that you don't. So according to Rebbe, what would be a case of that it's so indirect, even though it's from your inertia, that you would not go to an Ir Miklat? So the Gemara answer is the following: Kagon, almost like a Rube Goldberg machine. Kagon deshada pisa umachi legarma va'azal garma umachi lekabasa va'asar tamari va'azal tamari v'katul. Right. In other words, what you did was, right. V'azal shunra, v'azal kalba v'noshach l'shunra, dehika l'chalba. Okay, it's more direct. What you did is you throw a projectile, you throw a clod of earth. It hits one of the palm fronds that's adjacent to the dates. The palm fronds then go and fly and hit the dates. The dates fall off and end up being killer dates.
Mousetrap. Right,
like mousetrap. That's a Rube Goldberg machine. Then in that situation, it is so indirect that even Rebbe would hold that you don't go to an Ir Miklat. Okay, have a wonderful